This is the FlipNerd.com Expert Real Estate Investing Show, the show for real estate investors, whether you're a veteran or brand new. I'm your host, Mike Hambright, and each week I bring you a new expert guest that will share their knowledge and lessons with you. If you're excited about real estate investing, believe in personal responsibility, and taking control of your life and financial destiny, you're in the right place. This is episode number 338, and my guest today is Brian Ellwood. Brian and his partner are doing around 75 deals a year in Middle Tennessee, but doing it all from their homes in Denver, Colorado. Brian shares the importance of marketing and lead generation with us today, and it's truly the lifeblood of our business. There's some great nuggets in today's show, so you do not want to miss it. By the way, this was the first show ever that I've actually recorded live. 337 episodes before this were done the old-fashioned way, I guess, but we recorded these live via Facebook Live. Now, FlipNerd Elite members were able to watch us live from within our private Facebook group, and we're able to ask questions live after the show was recorded. It was actually pretty cool. In fact, all of our shows are going to be recorded live from here on out, and only our FlipNerd Elite members will have access to participate. Of course, the shows will still be added ultimately to iTunes, Stitcher Radio, FlipNerd.com, and a lot of other places as well. That's usually a couple weeks after the shows are recorded. If you're interested in watching us live on another upcoming show, typically one show a week is recorded, as well as all the other benefits of a FlipNerd Elite membership, we have an opportunity for you to try out our FlipNerd Elite membership for just $1. If you want to learn more, please visit flipnerd.com/trial. But now, let's join the show. Please help me welcome Brian Ellwood to the show. Everybody that's watching right now, this is the first time we've actually done the my expert interview show live, and we're planning to do it that way going forward for our Elite members. And so anybody that's watching this right now is an Elite member because we're only broadcasting this in our Facebook group. And so some of you will be watching this after the fact. This is episode number 338, and just to kind of lay some ground rules here for those of you that are watching, our intention is that we're going to have a final product that's much like the show has been for the, 337 episodes before this. And so essentially, we're not going to pay too much attention to you while we're recording the show, which will last about 30 minutes or so. And then at the end, we'll open up to a Q&A with Brian here, the mountain man, who is going to share some great knowledge with us today. It's going to be a great topic. So what we're going to do is, I guess, kind of like you're watching a show be recorded like a television show. We're recording in front of a live studio audience, and we're going to see you out there, but we're going to kind of not interact until the end, and hope that makes sense. So if you have any questions, type them in, and we'll get to them at the end of the show. And even if you're watching this afterwards, type some questions in, and I'll check it and see what I can do to answer questions. And maybe Brian, I'll check the group as well for the next day or so here and see if he can respond to any questions you have. So sound good, everybody? Well, awesome. So Brian, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to see you. I'm envious because we went skiing, I guess, about a month and a half ago, and you live in Denver, so you do that. You said a couple times a week, so that is incredible.
Yeah, you need to make it out here more often. Visit me.
Yeah. I will say that I had not been skiing in a long time, so it showed for sure. I felt it for a while. Well, Brian, I'm really excited to talk about this topic today of why new investors and maybe even veteran investors should spend, you're saying 80%, a dominant amount of their time actually on lead generation activities. And I think that's not what most real estate investors do, especially new folks, because they just don't quite make the connection yet that that's what drives the entire business. If you don't have leads, you don't have a business. So it's going to be a great subject to discuss with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Hey, before we get started, Brian, tell us a little bit about you and your background and what you do now.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Tennessee. I grew up there and went to the University of Tennessee. Got my degree from there. Spent a few years in the corporate world and realized that wasn't for me. And so I kind of went out into the entrepreneurial world. Was very desperate for an alternative. I met a mentor who fixed and flipped houses. And he took me under his wing and taught me how to do what he does. And that was about 4 years ago. I went out on my own after working with him for about a year.
Okay.
And
You were
now
doing that. That was in Denver. You were doing that, or that was in Nashville?
Nashville.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So our business is still, it's actually across all of Middle Tennessee. We invest. We live, my business partner and I actually live in Denver, but we weren't able to do this overnight. We built a team around us that could fulfill our product. Basically, what we do is we rehab houses, but we don't do expensive rehabs. It's more or less $10,000 or so. The first 10,000 is necessary. Put it back on the market. Our primary buyer is people that want to move into the house and do the bigger renovations themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
So we built a team in Nashville that fulfills that. We have acquisition managers, project managers, et cetera. And we got to the business to the point where we could run it from our houses in Nashville, and decided to test this theory by moving to Colorado and seeing if we could still run the business. And that was 2 years ago. And we still run our business virtually. Yeah. From here.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny because for those of you that are watching, I asked Brian, because I know his arrangement, but I wasn't aware of how often he goes back to Nashville. And I said, how often do you go back to Nashville? And he said, Christmas time. So you're not even, I know people that invest in other markets and they have a tendency to, still go there once a month or do other things, but you guys are totally off the grid, which is cool.
Yeah. And we probably should go more often. We probably would, be able to accomplish certain things if we did. We have a couple dozen rental properties there in Nashville.
Yeah.
And when we do go in town, we check on our rentals and whatnot, so we can write the trip off. But yeah, most of the time when we go, it's to visit family or friends and hang out with employees a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, let's talk about lead generation. So you and I both know, and all veteran investors know that it's a funnel, right? You've got the more you put in that funnel, the more that's going to come out, to kind of say it simply. But I think a lot of newer real estate investors don't really realize that you have to invest in your business. You've got to generate leads for anything to come out the other side, right? So a lot of people, I think it's because all the TV shows and all those things, they talk about real estate investing, but they never talk about how did you get the product. It's always just assumed that, well, you just go grab one. They're all over. But it's like, it's not that easy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very easy to get distracted by the product itself and to kind of drown in the process of monetizing the deal that you got.
Right.
To be all concerned with which backsplash am I going to put in this kitchen to get the best, sales price. But
before you've even bought it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, that is a business model. There are people who don't do any marketing. They buy everything, off the MLS, or, from some other source, and they make good money. But I think, us and most of your listeners want to build a business that operates, from start to finish, right?
Yeah.
And they want to generate the leads. And so this idea of 80% of your time and resources on marketing and sales, I got it from a great business book. It's called Ready, Fire, Aim by Michael Masterson. This guy's like one of the sharks on Shark Tank. He's like that level of business. And that's like one of his greatest lessons. And it took me a long time to really learn this lesson. But just to break it down for your listeners really simply, what a business looks like is it starts with marketing, and that generates leads. And then those leads get converted to sales. And then the sales create revenue. They create income for your business. And the income can be used to hire new people, to grow your business, right? Because you have to deliver the product. So you have to build systems and processes to support all the activity you generated. And of course, you have to invest some of that revenue back into marketing. But at the end of the day, that revenue that comes in is the driving indicator. So if you're a rock star at marketing and sales, you basically have your finger on the dial of your business growth. You can control whether or not your business grows if you can control your marketing and sales.
Yep.
And marketing and sales is the lifeblood of the business. It's what feeds the business. no business has ever gone out of business because they didn't have a set of shiny MacBook computers to give their team. But businesses go out of business all the time because they run out of money. And
Yeah.
so that has to
Or they
be
don't have customers
exactly
or leads, effectively. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. It's, what's interesting is, that, I think a lot of newer real estate investors, they get started and they say, I want to be an investor. So they have the interest in being a real estate investor, but they don't think of this. They think of like how I'm going to find deals comes up after they've quit their job or after they made the decision to start doing it. And it's like, well, you've totally put the cart before the horse. Like, what are you going to do to drive your business, right? Are you looking to change your life through real estate investing? If you're interested in either getting started or taking your business to the next level, please check out FlipNerd's private program at theinvestormachine.com. This is the most robust real estate investor coaching, networking, and mastermind on the planet and designed for your success. If you're ready to roll up your sleeves, ready to take personal responsibility for your own success, and ready to dive into a world-class instructional coaching program that provides you step-by-step instruction to help you achieve financial freedom, then you should apply today. Spaces are limited and candidates are only considered after an application and interview process. Our 12-month investor program is unparalleled. Think you might be a fit? Learn more today at theinvestormachine.com. And it's like, well, you've totally put the cart before the horse. Like, what are you going to do to drive your business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Generating leads needs to come first and foremost. Really, the person that has if you can get a contract signed, then you're the one that has the gold. And how you monetize that is it's relatively simple. Like if I gave you 100 signed contracts today, all with nice profit margins built in, I bet you could figure out how to monetize those deals. You could scramble to build the processes and hire some people to help monetize 100 signed contracts like all at once. It'd be a mess, but you could do it.
Yeah.
I'd argue that getting those contracts in the first place is the hard part of the equation.
Absolutely.
Once you've got them is not. And to your listeners that are just starting out, one example that registers with me that they might also register with is, how many times have you seen like a musician or an artist who's really talented at what they do, but they haven't made it? You go to a dive bar and some guy's playing guitar and singing, and you're like, man, this guy's so good. Why hasn't he been discovered? Why hasn't he made it? And it's because he's not marketing himself and selling himself. He's got the raw talent, but he does not know how to get out there and do it. And that is the biggest mistake that any entrepreneur makes when they first start, is that they avoid the marketing and sales part of the process because it's scary, or they don't understand it, or they have a negative stigma. Like, the used car salesman, like, I don't want to sales, that sounds negative. There's a lot of reasons why people avoid it, but it is the number one reason that entrepreneurs fail.
Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing is there's this chasm of I'm guy with truck, I'm one guy that's doing this. I'm doing the buying, I'm answering the phone, I'm doing everything myself. And then what starts to happen is, well, first off, until you start doing deals, you don't have, we're going to talk about how to get leads here in just a minute, but you don't have, the money to invest in a team necessarily. Now, if I was to go start a factory, I would need millions of dollars for equipment and machines and all this stuff, and I'm not saying that real estate investors can't start with nothing, because I know a lot of people that did and they're very successful. And I know people that started with a lot of money and they just kind of pissed it away because they weren't scrappy enough. So not that that's the answer to everything, but it's so much easier if you can invest in your business up front. So I mean, I came in that way just because I bought in originally to a franchise system. I kind of understood that. I mean, they had requirements. I had to have an administrative person. I had to have a physical office. Like, they wanted you to kind of operate like a business. But I think the problem is a lot of people that get started on their own and they have the intention to grow into that. They just never get past themselves where they're doing every single thing, and then they forget to do the advertising, or they didn't get the mail in on time, or you just spread so thin that you can't do it all. So it's kind of getting to that point to where you can reinvest back in your business and add some capacity to really truly become a business instead of it's just a job for you, right?
Yeah, you're reminding me of the message that's in the business classic, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber,
Yeah.
which anyone listening hasn't read that, you might as well just hit pause on this video and go grab that book. Because you have to adopt the mindset of a business owner, not an employee, if you want to be truly successful as an entrepreneur. And that's not easy to do. I know a lot of people they relentlessly cling to every part of the process. I mean, they're over there painting the cabinets themselves and stuff, but you have to realize that you can pay somebody $12 an hour to paint cabinets. So if you're choosing to paint the cabinets, then you're choosing to save $12 an hour, which in essence means pay yourself $12 an hour, which you're telling the world that that's what you're worth, basically.
Yeah.
It's very, very important. And I know this is a little different from our topic of marketing and sales, but it's very, very important for you to determine what your unique ability is and focus on actively quitting everything else as fast as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And until you do that, you can't grow. You can't think about growing. You can't do a lot of the things that you started that business to do in the first place. You wanted freedom of time. You wanted financial freedom. You wanted those things, but you're your own bottleneck, right?
Absolutely. And I've preached this a lot. I think that when you're going into any kind of entrepreneurial endeavor, the main thing, that I've heard in all the surveys and things that entrepreneurs want when they go into business for themselves is to create freedom. They want to be able to do what they want when they want. You're probably no different. You want to be sitting in your FlipNerd office doing this right now. You don't want anyone telling you what to do, right?
I'm with Brian now. Don't take that away from me.
You're what?
I'm with Brian right now. Don't take that time away from me.
Exactly. So very important, to start out with the lifestyle, the day-to-day lifestyle that you want to live and back into that rather than just go crazy and work 80 hours a week. That's not really necessary, in the beginning.
It's not sustainable, at least. Yeah.
Right.
Well, hey, let's jump into leads. So we know leads are important because they fuel everything. So what's a little bit harder is how to get them, right? And so one thing I wanted to do is talk about, I know you're going to share some different ways to generate leads or maybe some things that you guys do, but to kind of break it apart into the stuff that's truly scalable, which typically is paid advertising, right? Direct mail, pay-per-click, some other things that you can essentially write a check for ultimately. And the next month you could double that check or triple that check. You could ramp up significantly. And then more of the stuff for people that are getting started are the stuff that's just more of their time and their sweat equity that they're putting into it, whether it's hustling to network or whatever those things might be. So you want to kind of break it down that way? I mean, maybe we could start by talking about some of the things that are not expensive per se, other than kind of your time or your own kind of elbow grease.
Yeah. So one idea that comes to mind is to build a network of referrals, or a referral network, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
So that can consist of wholesalers, property managers, attorneys, realtors, anybody who would basically come across deals, right?
Yeah.
And then so that's an email list that you need to reach out to. And just like, growing an info business, the bigger the list, the more response you get, the more money you make. And then just every Tuesday morning, you can send an email out to that entire list, blind carbon copy. Hey, I'm looking to buy. Got anything? And so you stay top of mind, because one week somebody doesn't have anything, but then the next week, oh yeah, I just talked to this lady down the street and she is looking to sell, next month or whatever. You'd be surprised how many leads you can get just by asking people. But the email way is a way to kind of scale that without being, without actually literally calling every person every Tuesday. You don't have time for that. So
sure. Yeah. You can make a lot of communications look personalized today.
Right.
By doing it in mass. So that's something that I've taught on for a long time. In fact, I just we just launched our coaching program, and so I created some training around this specifically about looking for ways to benefit that person as well. Because every realtor in town has heard, "Hey, I want to work with you as an investor." Like they get that a lot. It's like, well, what can you do to add value to them to where it's kind of tit for tat and not just one sided? So I think without getting into too much discussion there, I think for folks listening, that's a great way when you're networking to think about how you can add value and not just extract value from other people, because those relationships don't last all that long if they ever
That's
even
very
start.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be things like, if you find deals on the MLS or HUD houses, bring them to me and you could represent me. It could be when I list my properties, I'm going to ask you to list them for me, or, a lot of things like that, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to reciprocate. But people will give you leads for nothing, just to help the person. Like a property manager, for example, they'll have problematic properties that they manage that they really hate managing because the property's crappy and it always goes vacant. And they want someone to buy that thing, just to take it off of their plate. And so they'll tell you about it. And an attorney who handles divorces or probate or inheritance will tell you about the lead because they want to help their client out too.
Yep.
So, but I like what you said. You definitely
for sure. Yeah. And so let's talk about some of the paid ones. Some of them are obvious, but maybe share what you guys do without, giving away your trade secrets.
Oh, I don't mind to, give away everything. I'll say one last thing, because I don't want to gloss over the free stuff too much. Follow-up is extremely important for those who do have, even if you have like 30 leads, like you literally just got started, those 30 leads are your gold right there. Keller Williams did a study where they found that 80% of deals come from anywhere between the 6th and 12th touch. So 6 to 12 times is necessary to get most of your deals. So if you're only talking to somebody once or saying no, and you're never contacting them again, you're leaving like 80% of your profit on the table, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those things too, about back to when you just get started, you need to realize what you're good at, for one. So for example, for myself, well, let's say one, what you're good at, and two, what you have the capacity to do, right? So it's kind of a classical problem for salespeople to say, I need more leads instead of working the ones you have harder, right? Especially if they're not paying for the leads. Like I've had sales guys before and they're like, man, we need more leads. It's like, well, what about that massive list you've got right there? So, but also if I usually teach people this. If you know that, like I know, here's what I know. We bought a house last year, for example, in the past year, that we bought it 54 months after we made our first offer.
Wow.
And we followed up monthly. So I had every touch point, and usually it was called left voicemail. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it was number disconnected. And we have, virtual assistants that do all of our follow-up. And so I wouldn't follow up 54 times. I would be like, man, I'm not going to call this number again. I would just give up after a couple of tries. But I know that about myself. So I've outsourced that because I know that I'm not the right guy to do it. But you've got to get a team built or have some resources to be able to help you with that, though.
Yeah, and I feel like we should mention this just for anybody that's just getting started. We're talking about marketing, but if you don't have an acquisition manager yet, that is a absolutely crucial hire. And acquisition managers, will work on a commission-only basis because, they make a decent percentage of the deal, so they can make good money if they can bring in the contracts. And so, you could hire an acquisition manager and just pay them draw if they need it for 60 to 90 days, then that drops off. And then from then on out, they don't cost a thing unless an actual closing happens. Money comes into the business. And then that person is basically your live follow-up machine. And they're really good at it because they're a professional salesperson, right? You want to get them some kind of training.
Yeah.
But we've highly automated. We've done, texting, email, like voicemail type blasting, follow-ups, and you can systemize all that, and it's really powerful. There's kind of a business logic that says that no matter what niche you're in, there's only 3% of the market is actually interested in what you have to offer. The other 97% don't care about you. They're never going to need your product or service. So those people that have raised their hand from your direct mail or whatever efforts you've already made are part of that 3%.
Sure.
So they are, much more likely to become, a deal than anyone else. So you have to treat every lead like gold.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's talk some more about leads, kind of paid leads, stuff that's a little more scalable, stuff that people that are doing a lot more volume tend to rely on.
Yeah, so everyone, has heard that direct mail is kind of the king of marketing in terms of real estate. And I would agree with that. It's been our bread and butter for the last 4 years. Just inexpensive postcards. You can get them for 30 to 40 cents each, and that includes postage, first class. So they can be there in 2 to 3 days. And we've had the best luck focusing on niche lists. So like a probate list or a list of maybe vacant land has always been pretty profitable if that's something that you can make money on in your market. Lists of people who are delinquent on their taxes. And I've talked to other investors, like in our mastermind, for example, who have said, probate and tax delinquent are our highest ROI lists. We get 5,000% ROI on this list. So obviously you have absentee owners, but at the end of the day, I can just tell you from experience, we've always made somewhere between 8 to 10 times what we spend on direct mail back in revenue. So that's one extra thing to say about marketing, is that marketing is not really an expense; it's an investment.
Sure.
And if you do it right, provides a return. And I've actually heard successful investors say that I'm a marketing company. I invest in marketing, and that makes me a return. I'm not really investing in houses. It's an interesting way to look at it, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that way a lot. I mean, I real estate happens to be my widget, like the product I focus on, and all of us focus on that because it has opportunity to get some big paydays, right? But at the end of the day, I think most of us are marketers and operations, people that are just, real estate happens to be what we're making in our factory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say another thing that you can add to all of your marketing efforts. In fact, you really should. It's called a USP or a UVP, which is unique selling proposition or unique value proposition. What that is what makes you different from all those other people out there. Because direct mail, for example, is really competitive nowadays.
Yeah.
So if you're just another dude who has a postcard hitting their mailbox that says houses, you basically have to cross your fingers and hope that they pick yours out of the pile. Right. So you probably watch Shark Tank when some guy comes on there and he's got some surfboard that you can work out on. And, the sharks say, why is yours better than all these other people out there? And he'll say, well, mine's made of this material that bends with your movement and it's patented and it's better than the rest. And that right there is actually good enough because they have a distinguishing characteristic to them. And if you deploy marketing and if you send sales guys out in the field and you don't have anything that makes your business special, it's like they're fighting without a sword.
Yeah.
They're trying to convince people to do business with them with no reason why they should.
Yeah. So what would you say? You guys are doing. We didn't talk about this up front, but you guys are doing a fair bit of volume, right? Can you just give an idea of your annual volume?
Yes, I'd probably somewhere around 75 deals a year.
Yep. So what is your selling proposition? What would you say your unique selling proposition is? Just for example, for purpose of example.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we focused on is just adding a lot of value to the seller in the closing process. We do all the traditional things like pay closing costs and no realtor commissions and all that stuff. But we go above and beyond by paying for any attorney needs that the seller has. We pay their property taxes in full at the closing table. We will negotiate and pay off credit card debt and liens for the customer. We will cover their moving costs, etc. And so if you line up all the options that the customer has, and guy number 1 buys houses, closes fast. Guy number 2 buys houses, closes fast. And then you got guy number 4 who does those things plus 8 other bullet points.
Yeah.
It's an easy decision. for the
Yeah, that
customer.
sounds like I've never heard of anybody that does some of these things that you guys do, like negotiating credit cards or moving costs. I mean, I've heard of people doing moving costs
Right.
before. There's always you have to put some maximum of value on that, right? Like if you have $1 million in credit card debt, like you're not gonna be able to help. But
Right.
um,
We try. Yeah.
yeah, what about like the you add a foot massage at the closing table? Is that that would be unique?
Or yeah, free
Some of
60
the a
inch.
lot of the sellers that I've had though, I don't want to touch their I don't want to touch their feet.
Yeah, the USP needs to be simple, easy for
Yeah,
the person to understand, and it needs to be memorable. And from
yeah,
what
it
I've
needs to
read,
be
you
kind of
actually have,
relevant. Like like you said, all these things that you listed here are things that will help get a person out of the house. But a lot of folks that we deal with have other financial issues going on or other debt issues, or so these are all very kind of relevant to that transition they need to make to kind of improve their situation, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And so, do you say that? I mean, how is that clear on? How do you represent that on your marketing when you answer the phone, when you go on appointments? Like, I'm guessing that you find a way to put that across the board where it's very clear this is what we do. But can you maybe share some thoughts on how you share that message with prospects?
Sure. Yeah. So it's literally word for word in our direct mail copy. Our postcard might say, every home buyer makes you the same old promises. We pay cash, we close fast, we pay your closing costs. Well, let me tell you, that stuff is easy. Here's all the other things we do, and it lists the 8 bullet points. And that's literally
Yeah.
what we'll send out to people. And then it's included in our sales process when the acquisition manager goes. We One thing we do is we created a free ebook that tells customers everything they need to know before selling their house, like checklist to choose the right person to sell it to, a checklist to go through before you come to the closing table, all the things to think about before you move, people's phone numbers and resources. And we advertise, a free download of that as well. We want to, kind of position ourselves as a very helpful home buyer at
Yeah.
our core. Um, and so it might be in an email drip campaign, just might be a video about how to, sell your property to an investor the safe way or something like that. It's just everywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I would say generally, most real estate investors I've seen have nothing in terms of marketing collateral, branding, stuff like that. They're just, guy in shorts and flip flops, and uh, he's in and out. Just wants to look at the house. Doesn't want to build a relationship. Doesn't want to talk about adding value. It's more about you know, what the seller can do for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Awesome, man. Well, so I know you just talked a lot about kind of helping your sellers, people that are selling to you and adding a lot of value there. And I know we were also going to talk about in the context of marketing and lead generation and why it's important to spend a lot of your time there is that you wanted to talk about getting to know your buyers better, right? Like trying to learn what the market is looking for so that you can kind of serve them, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. If you're talking about like the customer itself, are you talking about the sellers or the person that
Yeah,
buys the?
people that are buying, people that you're selling to ultimately. So you talked about kind of profiling what people are looking for, how the process was of buying from you. Some of those things we talked about right before we started today.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was something that I wish I would have done from day one. Is the moment we purchase somebody's property, give them a call and do what we call a customer development interview, which
Mm.
is where you would gather first of all their demographic information like age, income, ethnicity, what types of media that they consume, what TV channels do they watch or radio stations they listen
Yeah.
to, newspaper. And then also their what they call psychographic information, which is, how do they think? What were their major fears going into doing business with an investor? What were their desired outcomes? And then and then you probably should incentivize them with a gift card or something for their time for doing that for
Yeah.
you.
So this is, just to clarify, this is for sellers that you're buying from.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. If you were talking about the people we end up selling the property to, it's listed on the MLS, and so it goes retail. I don't actually know much about that customer.
Right. There's an agent in the middle. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Brian, maybe we could just talk for a minute on, if folks that are listening to this, it's always hard. We have so many listeners for the show now, which thank you if you're listening. It is, maybe you could share some tips on people that are the person that's listening right now that hasn't gotten started, but they plan to soon, or the person that is starting but they're kind of struggling to do any significant volume to kind of get themselves out of essentially the job they've created for themselves. Maybe those two different profiles, you could share some thoughts on how people can start to spend more time on their marketing. And I wanted to take that lightly and just say, well, just spend more of your time on this, because you got to figure out what you're going to do less of, right? But spend more time on lead generation activities, and maybe some kind of words of wisdom on how they can hear this today and then go change things tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think, I keep going, like, you want me to give you specific marketing strategies, and I keep going high level on you, and
no,
that's because I do.
It's about a 30-minute show, so.
Okay, I do believe that a lot of it does come down to mindset, and taking massive action and going through that period of being scared and kind of needing to have courage. I personally literally quit my job and just dove in with both feet. So I didn't have an exit strategy. And that actually worked out better for me because there was an amazing amount of pressure on me to make it work. I mean, it was to the point where, like, my girlfriend had to pay the mortgage and stuff, and it was really stressful. And so that actually pushed me to take the action. But, if you're talking like, specific thing that somebody can be doing to generate leads, I can tell you a really simple strategy that worked for me. I got my first maybe 10 deals this way.
Yeah.
Was I would just drive around and write down the addresses of ugly houses in my neighborhood, go home, handwrite yellow letters to them, and take the calls personally, go over there, get the property under contract. All I paid was for, the letters I sent out. And I'd probably sent out, 50 to 100 a week. And I would just literally drive all the time and canvass every single street, in the whole city. And I had a massive driving for dollars list. The beauty of building that list is you're really cherry picking the properties that are most likely to sell to you because they're in bad shape.
Sure.
Whereas if you buy a list online, you have no idea what shape they're in.
Right.
I think that's a great strategy for people. If you want to just have a little bit of like something to get you going, set a goal. Like every day I'm going to get 25 new addresses, and every week I'm going to mail a minimum of 100 letters or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that
is an important thing, I think, for newer people, is to set those small goals, because sometimes you're like, I just want to get a house. It's like, but set some like stepping stones, right, to get there. So just commit to every day I'm going to get 10 of these or 25 of that. And this is my this is my goal for the week, and then hold yourself accountable. Because now that you're self-employed, or you're trying to be, or, trying to make this work, you've got to hold yourself accountable for these small goals. And then, eventually you'll be able to hold people on your team accountable for those same types of goals, right?
Yep, absolutely. And offers made is another one. Follow-up calls made is another great thing that you can set a goal for yourself and track.
Yeah, it's easy, especially when you become self-employed, or you're doing this on the side, try to get something going, it's easy to be inefficient because we're distracted by social media. We're distracted by all these things. So I think until you have some goals written down and defined, almost like a little scorecard for yourself, or your team ultimately, that it's easy for weeks or months to go by and you haven't really done a lot of productive things. Even though you were busy, it just wasn't stuff that was helping you generate more leads or do more deals.
It's a good point. Even businesses that are at our level or higher, they're all run by the numbers, right? They all have key KPIs that we track that determine the business's success. So when you're just getting started, you're right, it is no different. And if marketing and sales needs to be at your core, you can just set goals for leads generated, phone calls made, appointments attended, offers made, and those precede contracts signed, which is what everyone ultimately wants. That's the big goal. And yeah, it really doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. Just focusing on those activities, getting leads, calling them, meeting them, making offers. You will succeed if you keep doing that. But it's scary, right? It does not feel good. You know what feels good? Staying at home and working on your website, making it polished. But that makes you no money.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You have to do the scary stuff. And I think that's one of the main things that hold people back, because I was terrified, when I first started in this business. I remember I used to go ahead.
I was going to say most people that I know, not most, a lot of people that I know that are successful, man, they hit bottom at one point with trying things or dead end jobs or whatever it is. And it's just got to a point to where failure was not an option that they could accept anymore or were willing to accept. And I think now that doesn't mean go live in your car and create an unnecessary hardship, but it just means know that and figure out a way to feel that pressure without necessarily having to put yourself in that situation if you can. Sounds easier said than done, but yeah.
Yeah, that is ultimately the biggest obstacle. People, they think they need the practical things like, well, where do I get the list and what does the letter say? But what they really need is to be courageous in the face of a fearful period in their life where it's not going to be very comfortable. Like, how you feel when you have to talk in front of people, like everybody feels all queasy and nervous. That's exactly how it feels to go through what you have to go through to be successful as an entrepreneur.
Sure.
And you can't go around that stage. You have to go through it.
Yep.
And so the things that you have to do are going to make you feel that way. I'm not necessarily the greatest mindset coach. I can tell people what to do, but everyone has to take that fearful journey on their own at some point. They have to step off into the abyss. Or maybe they don't, but that's how it works.
That's great. Well, Brian, if folks wanted to, if folks wanted to learn more about you or follow along, I know you started a blog recently. Where can they go to learn more about you and some of the things you're doing?
Yeah, so it's just myname.net. So brianellwood.net. You can learn more about me there. I do coach entrepreneurs as well. I'm actually taking on 4 new students over the next 3 months. And you could also just email me directly at brian@brianellwood.net. I promise I will give you a reply. I'd love to hear your questions.
brian@brianellwood.net. And on your website there, is that where your blog's at?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I know you've been working on that, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for joining us on the show, and everybody, thanks for joining us for this. Again, this is our first live show, so really appreciate you being here. And Brian, thanks for your time. Great lessons in there, and I hope everybody paid attention and wrote some of those things down for sure. And more importantly, put them in play.
Yeah, I'm really happy to do this interview, Mike. I really respect what you've built here at FlipNerd, and I love adding value to other people. So I'm more than happy to help you and your team in any way I can, and come back on the show, whatever you need.
Thanks, man. I definitely appreciate your time for sure. Awesome. Well, have a great day.
All right. You too. Take care.
Yep. Awesome. Hey, everybody. So for those of you that are still kind of watching along here, we got a few folks watching. I wanted to kind of open it up to some questions. And again, for those of you that are listening to this or watching this, whether it's live or after the fact, this is our first live show that we've done, and we're going to do them all this way inside of the FlipNerd private Facebook group. And our intention is to open it up for 10 minutes or so to answer some questions for things we talked about today, or any other questions that you might have for Brian. So if you have any questions, go ahead and chat them in. And if you're listening to it after the fact, still go ahead and ask your questions, and we'll either Brian or I'll try to get to them over the next day or two to give you a response. So, um, Brian, one question that I know we have is talking about. You talked about different lead sources, and I think a lot of us are kind of operational. We want to just like say, okay, probate leads, I've got a source, and now I'm done. Like I'm just going to use that source. But can you talk about how you said you use a lot of niche lists, but can you talk about how you are staying abreast of what's working and what's not working, and how often you kind of revisit those things to make adjustments if you need to?
Yeah. Well, a couple things come to mind when you say that. One is to always be surrounding myself with other people who do what we're doing, so you can kind of stay on top of the hottest strategies that are working in the investing world. Secondly, it would be tracking your ROI on each marketing effort. So if you know that you've spent $5,000, this year on probates, but you made 100, that's an amazing return. And you know that you could probably afford to spend more.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to track everything by the dollar.
Yeah. And do you use CallRail or a tool like that?
We used to. All of our calls go through TalkDesk now.
Okay. But you use different phone numbers for your different lead sources,
Yes,
I presume.
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's important to it's important to use different phone numbers for your different lead sources ultimately. I mean, you could even use it for same lead source, but different, whether it's a letter versus a postcard or anything you want to compare. You could, a lot of tools these days allow you to get essentially a tracking phone number for $2 or $3 a month, but allows you to know what's working and what's not, right?
Yeah, if you were going to throw an ad in the yellow pages because you thought, man, maybe our customer demographic still reads the yellow pages. The only way you're going to know if that works is it's got to have its own dedicated phone number. Yeah. And then at the end of the year, you can just simply compare what did that yellow page ad cost me to how many actual dollars did it generate, and then decide if it's worth it or not to continue.
Yeah. Yeah. Oddly enough, we got something in the mail recently that for years we get all these yellow page books. I'm like, I just pick them up and put them in the recycling bin, which is always painful. But this year, I think we got something in the mail asking if we wanted a yellow page. Is it like we'll give it to you if you want it, instead of just assuming everybody wants it. So that was an interesting transition, I thought.
Saving a few trees. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So another question on the fact that you are kind of a hot topic these days is virtual investing, right? Being in a different market, like you live in Denver, but you invest in Nashville or kind of central Tennessee. What do you call it? Middle Tennessee?
Yeah.
Okay. So Middle Tennessee. So, of course you started in Nashville and you were boots on the ground for a while and then built up your processes in order to leave. But I know there's a number of guys it's a lot of guys that we know actually that are just like, I've never even been there before, but I'm going to start investing there. Right. And so there's a lot of new investors that are trying to invest virtually in other markets where they're not. And on the same time, having some of the same troubles that we're talking about with not being able to generate a lot of leads and things like that, which probably exaggerates the poor performance because you're not actually even there. But anyway, you want to share some thoughts on kind of investing virtually for those that are new or newer, and whether that's something that you think they can overcome easily, or ways to kind of make that easier if that's what they want to do?
Yeah. So there's a kind of a lot, that you got to figure out. It's entirely possible for anybody to do. I would say that the more complicated your back end strategy is, the harder it's going to be. Yeah. Someone's just a wholesaler, they could probably invest virtually pretty easily. If you're going to do extensive rehabs or new construction, it's going to be harder to do that, obviously, from afar. One thing that I've found that, one of the reasons we could move away from Nashville, Middle Tennessee, but still invest was because we understand that market. We know all the pockets that are hot and the ones to stay away from. And so if I was just going to pick a market out of the blue, like I'm going to invest in Cleveland, Ohio, I would need to talk to people there that really understand that market. and they can tell me what zip codes to focus on and which ones to stay away from. That'd be one of the first steps. Because then you could start focusing like your direct mail efforts on the areas that matter. Mm-hmm. And then values is important too. Like what is a property worth in that market? Sometimes it's not quite as easy as just looking at the ARV and doing your standard formula. There's weird things about markets, like, oh, well, that's in a bad school zone, or, that area is hot because they're about to add a Whole Foods or something.
Right,
so you have to surpass that learning curve. If you're talking about a market that you don't understand. We kind of had a unique scenario in that we moved away from a market that we already did understand.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And in some markets, especially like in the Northeast, some densely populated markets, I mean, one block to the next could be like night and day. I know where I'm at in Dallas, it's clearly a different neighborhood across main thoroughfares, but it doesn't usually change dramatically from like one street to the next. But in older, more densely populated areas, that's a very real situation. So you need to be aware of those where the lines are, right?
Yeah, and those areas, in my experience, are the hottest areas to invest in. The areas that are gentrifying, the areas where you have a new house going up, and then 5 streets away, it's like really rough houses, just really bad shape. You should buy houses 5 streets away if you can. Like, I've made the most money from our rental portfolio from buying in areas that were sketchy, but there was a lot of new development, 5 to 10 streets away. So those are the areas that I would actually be looking for to focus on first if I was going to invest virtually, because you always want to start by scooping the low-hanging fruit and then making sure that works before you scale and expand to the whole market.
Yeah, that's great. That's great information. Well, Brian, is there anything that we didn't get to cover during the main part of the show that you wanted to share in the last few minutes here?
I'd say final thought about why marketing and sales is so important. If you are a ninja at marketing and sales, you will create an abundance of opportunities to choose from. Therefore, you can choose the ones that have the best margins and the lowest risk, which makes everything in your business a lot easier and less stressful, right? Because you have healthier margins. If something goes wrong, you're not going to lose money on deals. You don't enter into deals that, are marginal because you're desperate, which we've done many times. You've heard so many stories of real estate investors that lose it all or, go broke on a big deal that went sour. Yeah. And it's probably because they entered the deal that they shouldn't have in the first place because they were a little bit desperate to make money. But if you are a marketing and sales ninja, like I said, you don't have to do that because you have an abundance to choose from, and you can fill your pipeline with revenue that is safe, predictable, and likely to actually see your bank account one day.
Yep. That's great. That's a great tip. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Brian, thanks again for spending time with us today. We definitely appreciate it. I'll tell you, normally we're kind of offline at this point and when I record my show, so we'll just kind of make this private though, or public though, but your show will be published to the non-elite members, those that weren't able to watch it live, in about 2 weeks from today, I believe. So that'll come out on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. We'll actually put it on the FlipNerd website. And so for those of you that got to watch this first version, thanks for being with us. And Brian, definitely great to see you, my friend. And appreciate your time with us today, and appreciate you sharing some knowledge with some great information in there. So definitely thank you for being here.
I really enjoyed it, man. I'll do it again anytime. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll talk again. We'll talk again soon. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Awesome. And everybody, thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the FlipNerd.com Investing Show. If you're not yet an elite member of FlipNerd, you're missing out. We have tons of great training, including a new detailed masterclass published each month and live training webinars with experts twice a month. Plus, you'll get access to all of our archives, where we already have a growing library of masterclasses and other training videos. Elite members also get membership in our incredible online Mastermind group, where many of the top real estate investors from across the country, including many of the hundreds of guests I've had on the show in the past, are already members. Whether you're brand new, looking to get started, or a veteran, you simply must join today. I promise you won't be disappointed. To learn more or join today, please visit flipnerd.com/lab. That's flipnerd.com/lab. See you on the next show.